Everything transformed in an instant when I heard my husband's harsh tone over the phone. He sharply questioned, "Why do you always fall apart when I need you most?" He seemed indifferent to the fact that I was in the hospital, fretting over our baby's well-being. Instead, he grumbled about his hunger and the absence of my home-cooked meals, mentioning that he was too impatient to wait and was opting to dine out with his parents. This left me to sort out my way back from the hospital. His words exacerbated my anxiety and sorrow, heightening my fears for our unborn child's safety and my ability to shield them. Previously, I was a committed cosmetic salesperson, praised for my diligence and success, with numerous accolades to my name. Falling in love with my husband felt like a fairy tale, and our courtship swiftly transitioned to marriage. Upon discovering my pregnancy, I faced the challenging decision to leave my job to mitigate the risk of miscarriage, prioritizing our future family's welfare. As my pregnancy advanced, the support from my husband dwindled. Initial excitement gave way to irritation, daily tasks became Herculean efforts, and I struggled to live up to his expectations. His constant queries about lunch and dismissive remarks about the simple meals I managed to prepare left me disheartened. He trivialized my pregnancy challenges, not recognizing them as legitimate health concerns, which left me feeling isolated and unsupported. This was a stark departure from the man I once fell deeply in love with. He stopped attending doctor's appointments and showed little interest in household duties that were increasingly difficult for me. Our home, once a haven of love and mutual respect, turned into a ground of constant strife as I endeavored to safeguard both myself and our baby. Despite these trials, I held on to hope that understanding and patience would return to our relationship. Perhaps he was just overwhelmed and stressed from mentoring a newcomer at work. I reassured myself that things might improve once the baby arrived and his workload eased. Hoping for a harmonious family routine, I often found myself whispering words of encouragement to my growing belly, trying to keep a positive outlook despite my physical discomfort and the tension at home. Unfortunately, the situation with my husband hadn't gotten any better. To add to the strain, my in-laws began dropping by without warning, further complicating matters. They would critique the cleanliness of our house and express concern about how we would cope with the baby, yet they still expected immediate service when it came to meals. These visits left me feeling defeated and anxious, and my husband's lack of support, as he sided with their criticisms, only deepened my feelings of inadequacy. One day, while heavily pregnant, I had gone out to buy groceries but ended up collapsing from sheer exhaustion. I regained consciousness in the hospital, relieved to hear that our baby was unharmed. The doctor advised several days of rest. I noticed missed calls from my husband on my phone, and, hoping for some sign of his concern, I returned his call. However, instead of comfort, his first words were sharp and accusatory. "Where have you been?" His indifference to my well-being and our baby's safety chilled me to the bone. I tried to explain, "I'm sorry I collapsed at the store and ended up in the hospital. They've put me on IV fluids and want me to stay here for a few days to recover." His reply was curt and devoid of empathy. "You collapse and I'm supposed to care? Why don't you answer when I call? You're so slow," he retorted, worsening my distress. Overwhelmed by his harshness, I pleaded with him, "Please stop yelling, it's not good for the baby." But he dismissed my concerns, continuing to complain, "We're starving here waiting for your awful cooking, and you're just relaxing in the hospital." It was evident he preferred dining out with his parents rather than supporting me in my time of need. This realization underscored the stark negativity surrounding our home environment, an atmosphere I feared would envelop our child. Despite my precarious health, the sharp sting of my husband's anger and apparent indifference was crushing. I hung up the phone, feeling utterly abandoned and heartbroken. As I shuffled back to my hospital room, tears flooded my cheeks, a stark reflection of my vulnerability. It was in this low moment that a familiar, comforting voice reached out. "Are you okay?" Looking up, I saw Elizabeth, a cherished acquaintance from my days as a cosmetic salesperson, extending a comforting towel toward me. Seeing Elizabeth again brought me an immense sense of relief and warmth. "Elizabeth, it's you. I'm so glad you remember me." Our unexpected meeting was like a beacon of kindness and connection in my darkest hour. To me, Elizabeth was more than a customer. After a difficult divorce that had eroded her confidence, leaving her to shun makeup completely, I approached her at the cosmetics counter one day, eager to help her rediscover some joy in self-care. The transformation wasn't just about her appearance. It revitalized her self-esteem and marked a significant step in her emotional recovery. Over time, Elizabeth became more than a client. She became a friend. However, about 6 years before I resigned from my job, Elizabeth stopped visiting, and I often wondered about her whereabouts. Now, here she was, offering support when I needed it most. "I had been hoping to reconnect with you, Elizabeth," I admitted, surprised yet grateful. She explained her absence. "I'm sorry for just showing up out of the blue. I've been working abroad, running a business overseas. It's been hectic, and I haven't had the chance to enjoy summer or good food in ages. Once things settled down." Her words trailed off, but her presence was a profound comfort, reminding me of the bonds that could still sustain me through tough times. When Elizabeth mentioned she had just returned and sought me out, her laughter lightened the mood. "Believe it or not, right after I got back, I tried to find you," she said with a chuckle. It turned out that Elizabeth had returned with a mild health scare, a pestis, which fortunately was caught early and easily treatable with medication. If this had happened while I was still overseas, the treatment costs would have been astronomical. "So in a way, I'm glad it happened here," she explained, her optimism and warm smile infectious. This unexpected reunion lifted my spirits, and we joyfully reminisced about the old times. As our conversation deepened, Elizabeth's expression turned thoughtful. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but you seemed quite upset earlier. What's going on?" Trusting Elizabeth not just as a former customer but as a genuine friend, I confided in her about my current struggles with my husband and in-laws. "I'm really worried about bringing my baby into this environment. I'm afraid they'll be treated the same way I am. And without my job, the idea of living independently, especially with a child, feels daunting." To my astonishment, Elizabeth made an incredibly generous offer. "I actually have an apartment you could use. I manage a few properties from a project I started with the land I inherited. It's a cozy 3-bedroom with a separate bathroom, solid roof, and good walls, and it's in a safe neighborhood close to supermarkets and a police station. You wouldn't need to pay a deposit right now, and you can start paying rent whenever you're ready. It's a really good deal. What do you think?" Elizabeth's excitement and sincerity were palpable, and I couldn't help but laugh, overwhelmed by her kindness. "Are you sure you can offer it at such great terms?" I asked. She replied confidently, "Absolutely. I trust you'll take good care of the place, and I think it's important to support each other during tough times." Her gesture was a profound reminder of the good in the world, just when I needed it most. "You're more than welcome to stay there," Elizabeth assured me with a warm, comforting smile. Her unexpected kindness was like a beam of light in my dark times, offering not just a place to stay, but also a chance for a new beginning. Overwhelmed by her generosity, I gratefully accepted her offer. A few days later, after the doctors had cleared me, I didn't return to the home I shared with my husband. Instead, I moved straight into the apartment Elizabeth had arranged for me. She had taken care of everything over the phone with such ease and kindness that it left me in awe. Settling into Elizabeth's cozy and welcoming apartment, I felt a twinge of guilt for not paying rent immediately, but Elizabeth brushed it off with a laugh, insisting I should not worry about it. While my husband was at work, I took the opportunity to go back to our old house to collect my belongings. The place felt strangely hollow and abandoned, mirroring the emptiness inside me. But Elizabeth's support extended beyond merely providing shelter. She connected me with a lawyer who had previously helped her. This connection solidified my decision to file for divorce. The lawyer was encouraging, and with each visit to the hospital confirming my baby's health, My resolve strengthened. One day, leaving the hospital, my heart sank as I saw my husband, John, waiting for me. Panic set in, and despite my attempts to leave quickly, my pregnancy slowed me down. He confronted me, demanding answers about the lawyer and our new living arrangement while gripping my arm tightly. Standing my ground, I insisted that any discussions about divorce, compensation, or child support should be conducted through my lawyer. I refused to go home with him. Just then, a young woman intervened. Lisa, as she introduced herself, stepped protectively in front of me. Her interaction with John was tense, revealing an underlying strain. Lisa firmly told him that he couldn't force me to leave against my will. Her bold stance was a stark contrast to my vulnerability at that moment, offering yet another unexpected layer of support when I needed it most. Lisa's firm stance and her threat to call the police shifted the dynamics dramatically, giving me a much-needed boost of hope and the courage to stand my ground. Seeing her determination, John quickly retreated, his fear evident as he hurried away. I was overwhelmed with relief, my knees nearly giving way under me. Lisa promptly came over to support me, asking with genuine concern, "Are you okay?" I apologized, feeling a rush of emotions, but she brushed it off and immediately hailed a taxi to ensure I got home safely. Despite my protests about troubling her, she reassured me that it was no bother at all. When I shared my address with her, she was surprised to find out that I lived just below her. What a serendipitous twist that we were neighbors. Lisa, always cheerful and kind, revealed that she was a new employee at John's workplace. She had reported his inappropriate conduct, which had resulted in him being stripped of his mentorship role. John had a history of being insensitive, especially towards female colleagues, often making inappropriate remarks about personal matters such as menstruation and marriage. Lisa confided that the issues with John extended beyond professional boundaries, something I had painfully experienced during my pregnancy. In the 2 weeks since that encounter, Lisa and I had grown close, frequently sharing meals and conversations. She informed me that due to multiple complaints, John had been reassigned to a subsidiary of the company. Intriguingly, Lisa turned out to be the daughter of Elizabeth, the very Elizabeth who owned the apartment I was staying in. John had often boastfully mentioned managing Elizabeth's account, but his poor conduct had led to his demotion. Elizabeth had been instrumental in ensuring that John was held accountable for his actions at work and towards me. Lisa, motivated by a desire to address workplace issues based on her own merits, had only acted upon realizing my connection to her mother. Elizabeth encouraged Lisa to take proactive steps, emphasizing the importance of standing up against inappropriate behavior in any environment. This revelation deepened the bond between us, as we both appreciated the strength and support we derived from our shared connections. With John's diminished role and increased responsibilities at work affecting his income, he found himself in a drastically altered position. Elizabeth, leveraging her vast experience, counseled me to stand firm and not succumb to John's attempts to elicit sympathy. This guidance proved invaluable as I moved forward with my decision to divorce him. Despite his attempts to reach out through our lawyer, sharing tales of his difficult job situation and expressing longing and apologies, I stayed firm in my resolve. Supported staunchly by Elizabeth, John eventually had no option but to accept the divorce and agree to the terms, which included child support and compensation. As I navigated this new chapter, another challenge arose with my in-laws, particularly my father-in-law, who was overly enthusiastic about the baby being a boy. I felt the undercurrents of impending issues, and soon enough my in-laws made their intentions clear. One day, as I was leaving the house, my father-in-law confronted me aggressively. He grabbed my arm and declared that once born, I must relinquish my baby to the family, claiming the baby was the rightful heir. Despite my attempts to break free, his grip was unyielding. At that moment, Lisa's commanding voice cut through the tension. With her expertise in judo, a skill honed to protect herself and her mother during their toughest times, she intervened. Swiftly, she employed a judo maneuver to release me from his hold. Lisa, a nationally recognized judoka, sternly reprimanded my father-in-law for his disregard of John's behavior and his intrusive demands on my life. She staunchly defended my right to a fresh start and made it clear that any further meddling was unacceptable. Just then, the sound of approaching sirens signaled that help was on the way. Lisa had prudently called the police before stepping in to assist me. My mother-in-law, who had been observing from a nearby car, remained silent as the police arrived and detained both her and my father-in-law. The arrest of my father-in-law was a pivotal moment, prompting my mother-in-law to reflect and subsequently decide to divorce him, signaling a significant shift in my tumultuous familial relations. When John tried to convince his mother to let him accompany her to start anew in the countryside, she firmly refused, communicating through the lawyer. She apologized for her previous actions and left some money as a gesture of goodwill. Elizabeth helped me understand that such gestures often come from a place of seeking forgiveness and a desire to contribute to my son's future, especially after a significant life change like leaving a marriage. Although surprised by her turnaround given her prior behavior, I appreciated her efforts to make amends. After the divorce was finalized, I welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world. Choosing solitude over a troubled life with John, my mother-in-law moved to the countryside. Meanwhile, when my father-in-law was released from custody, he discovered that before leaving, my mother-in-law had demolished their house. With nowhere else to go, he moved in with John, which only compounded their issues and eventually led to John resigning from his job due to his tarnished reputation. Despite these upheavals, child support payments were consistently handled, likely facilitated by Elizabeth and the lawyer. Lisa's courage and integrity at work did not go unnoticed. She was promoted to project leader, earning the respect and admiration of her peers. Elizabeth's various projects, including initiatives for women-only properties and housing for foreigners, continued to thrive. As for me, once my son was old enough, I planned to rejoin the workforce. Elizabeth had graciously offered me a position at a new high-end cosmetic store she was launching. Both Elizabeth and Lisa continued to be a great source of support and showed immense affection for my son, treating him as if he were Elizabeth's grandchild. Lisa also made time to visit us regularly. Their unwavering strength and kindness were not only a comfort during my most challenging times, but also a powerful example of the resilience and protectiveness I aspired to embody for my son. Inspired by these remarkable women, I was determined to provide the same level of strength and protection for my son as they had for me.